There are some things that we just never expect to see or hear. Although there were rumors of Holdens being made in China a few years ago, around the time that the last gen Commodore was made. But did you know this is not Holden's first time in China? For that, we have to go back to the 80s. It's the 1980s, and Holden was at the time building the new generation Commodore. The series was the VN, also known as the Opel Omega and Opel Senator in Europe, and its sister model, the Vauxhall Carton 2 and Senator 2. The VN was given a Buick V6 and a Holden V8. The project cost around 200 million AU dollars, or around 800 million in today's money. The VN Commodore came in three different models: sedan, ute, and wagon. The base model was the V6, and the SS model came with the V8. They both cost around 20 grand, and both came in manual and auto. But for this story, we will only be talking about the wagon model. With the need to bolster China's economy and reduce trade defects caused by rising imports, the Chinese government's solution was to slap tariffs on incoming goods. Forcing this, some Western car brands got to the front foot. Volkswagen and AMC each signed contracts during the 80s to build vehicles in China for the next 2 decades, which proved a production move as March 1985 saw the governments imposing a whopping 260% duty on imports. 6 months later, in September 85, imports were halted altogether for around 24 months. Plenty of local players rushed to fill the vacuum, but since most didn't have the knowledge, skill, or technology required to build cars, the results varied greatly until Holden's program manager for imported passenger vehicles, Mr. Neil Pogson, came in. It was because of Neil's electric side duties that sometime in 1993, another peculiar inquiry landed on his desk, lodged by the Melbourne-based import/export agent. They are still in business today, so I won't say their names, Neil says, but they were acting on behalf of a Chinese company that was looking to buy stamped sheet metal sets to build their cars. China's massive import duty remained into the 90s, with local manufacturers continuing to take advantage of the economic isolation. And that's where CNAIEXC, China National Automotive Industry and Export Chairman Corporation, comes in, a Chinese state body tasked with coordinating the purchase once the program was well underway. Neil learned the car would be built by Beijing Travel Vehicle Works. CNAIEXC proposed that Holden supply 500 sets of Commodore wagon outer sheet metal for fitting the driveline and bizarrely the floor pan. Holden also supplied contact details for bumpers, grills, and glass. The plan required Holden to send the parts, and the agency would take care of the rest. The VN wagon was renamed to the BJ6490, and was put on a truck frame, making it 2 inches taller than normal due to how bad the roads are in China. Other than that, the body was the same as the AU-1. The other changes to the vehicle were badges and it being left-hand drive as well. The engine in the BJ6490 wagon was a bit different to the AU model. So instead of the normal V6 or V8 engines, the BJ6490 had a 2.2 litre 4Y engine produced in China as the 491Q. This seems reasonable, but the French-based Chinese car historian Eric van Ingenschenel believes the BJ6490 was actually running a Mopar engine. The original Chrysler 2.2 appeared in a bunch of 1980s K-platform cars Australia never got, such as the Chrysler LeBaron, Dodge Daytona, and Plymouth Voyager. By 1995, the Western world was done with it, and the Chinese brand First Auto Work had purchased both the tools and licensing rights produced as the 2213cc CA488 and spun around 90 degrees for rear-wheel drive applications. The engine was also used in Chinese Audis, Nissans, and Chevrolets. But this wasn't the only model of the BJ6490. There was another one, and this one was a unique one. Why is this one unique? It was an EV one. In 1996, there was an electric vehicle expo in Beijing, where companies from around the world, including Chinese companies, displayed some of their electric vehicles and prototypes. In this photo, you can see former Chinese Premier Li Peng at the show being shown around by some important people. Sadly, it does seem like they are completely ignoring the blue car on the right, the BJ6490D, an electric version of the BJ6490. The fact that we can see the cluster through the window suggests the car was turned on. The text on the side of the vehicle says electric passenger vehicle. The BJ6490D was the brainchild of Mr. Hun Jiazhan, a Beijing second auto engineer. He said, "We chose to base the electric car off the BJ6490 due to its ability to hold lots of batteries." The division responsible for the BJ6490D was the Beijing Second Auto Works Green Vehicle Research Division. In 1997, a certain Mr. Wang Chun Fu, the founder of BYD, showed interest in importing an electric vehicle to experiment to help develop BYD's own technology, since at the time BYD was a battery and electronics company, and now it's one of the largest EV companies in the world. Mr. Hyun heard of Mr. Wang's plan to import an electric car and managed to convince him to purchase a BJ6490D instead. The car did help with development of the BYD, but didn't get that far. So, what went wrong with the BJ6490? A lot of things went wrong. First, even when production began around 1994 to 1995, the VN Commodore was already out of date. It also didn't help that the chassis under the body wasn't even a Holden Commodore, but a rugged truck chassis, and the car also only had a 2.2-litre engine, unlike Australia and New Zealand, who got the V8 and V6s. The car was also put on a truck chassis for one reason, and that reason was the roads in China were bad. But it also made the vehicle drive like a work van and not a family wagon. It also had a crude dashboard due to the Chinese trying to right-hand drive swap them, but that didn't go well. And that was the car side of things, but there were also some other things that made the project fail. Those things being, in the early 90s, the Chinese manufacturers would often rely on foreign parts and older designs, but within a few years, major joint ventures with companies like Volkswagen, GM, and Toyota began building modern cars locally, making the BJ6490 project unsuccessful. Around that time as well, Holden wasn't interested in expanding and decided to not pursue any operations in China for some odd reason. The BJ6490 might have been a failure for the market, but it did have a lasting legacy. Engineers converted some BJ6490D electric prototypes. In 1997, a young battery company called BYD bought one or two, so its founder and CEO Wang Chu-fu could study EV technology. That one humble Commodore wagon would help build one of the largest EV companies in the world, BYD. And now that Commodore sits abandoned in a parking lot somewhere in Hong Kong. And that's the story of the humble Commodore wagon that became one of China's first EV cars. I hope you guys all liked the story. I'm sorry if I said any of the names incorrectly. And I'll see you all for the next video. That will be going back to America to look at a cool truck. But as always, Meatloaf out.